What's up, friend, and welcome back to a new video here on the channel. Today we're going to have a look at the best cards from the new Magic the Gathering set, The Hobbit, for Standard Constructed. Now this is going to be a little bit tricky because we just had bans happen yesterday, so the Standard meta is completely upside down. So what we're going to do is we're really going to focus on the individual card quality of these cards and see if they slot into some already existing archetypes or maybe are powerful enough to make new archetypes happen in Standard. But it's going to be really exciting as the meta is wide open. So I'll be giving you guys 10 cards that I consider to be the very best, the very strongest for Standard. We're also going to have a look at 8 sleeper cards. Cards that you shouldn't skip over because they may be a lot more powerful than you expect. So with that being said, let's dive into it and let's have a look at the best cards from The Hobbit. Okay, so the following 10 cards are in no particular order, just what I consider to be the very best. And we're starting off with Belladonna Took. A 2-mana 2/2 legendary creature, halfling citizen. Whenever a token creature enters, you gain 1 life if this is the first time this ability has resolved this turn. If this is the second time, you get to draw a card, and if it's the third time, you put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. This is an absolutely insane card within token decks in Standard. I mean, it's incredible with the mobilize mechanic. This card in combination with some Voice of Victory is really awesome. And we also have other token payoff cards in Standard that already push the archetype into a really good spot. I think Political Triumph is a very underrated card. Cards like Suki also have really great token payoff. But one card that is going to be really sweet in combination with Belladonna Took is going to be the Last Ronin's Technique, which puts 3 tokens onto the battlefield immediately. So you get all of the Belladonna Took triggers off of 1 card, which is going to be really sweet. I could see this in Boros tokens, maybe in combination with War Leader Skull and Delny Arabella stuff. Maybe Ortov tokens, or perhaps a mono-white token deck list. This card is just really sweet. Feels like an auto-include in any token deck list. And I think we're going to see a lot from Belladonna Took in Standard. The next card on my list is a little bit controversial. Either you believe it's going to be a Standard staple, or you think it's absolute trash. I'm personally convinced it's a Standard staple. I'm talking about Bilbo's Gambit, a 2-mana instant where you gift a treasure, return the target spell to its owner's hand. If the gift was promised, players can't cast spells this turn. I think this is a card that's going to be used by a wide variety of decks. You could play it as a control deck and force your opponent to skip the turn. But maybe when you're playing an aggressive white deck list with creatures, you can force your opponent to take back their board wipe, buy yourself another turn, and that can sometimes be good enough to win the game. Because this card is basically a force skip the turn for the small price of a treasure. So I think it's going to be a very annoying card. Even Blue-White Prison or something could use this really easily, I think. Because it kind of forces a lock onto your opponent, and that's all that the decklist tries to do. So yeah, this seems really good. Effects like these tend to be pretty powerful, so I think Bilbo's Gambit will be seeing a lot of play in Standard and will be a very frustrating card to play against. The next card on my list is none other than Bilbo Thief in the Night, a 2-mana 2/2 legendary creature, halfling rogue. Spells you cast from anywhere other than your hand cost 1 less to cast. Whenever Bilbo attacks, you may cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell from your graveyard, and if an instant or sorcery spell cast this way, we put into your graveyard, exiled instead. There's so much value packed into this little 2-drop. You can build a deck list around its static effect, where spells you cast anywhere other than your hand cost 1 less to cast. Of course, it already synergizes with the card itself, but you could combine it with things like airbending, flashback cards, warping, anything of the sort, other cards that somehow exile. Bilbo also has really great synergy in combination with one of Standard's staple cards, which is the Tablet of Discovery. On top of that, the attack trigger is kind of reminiscent of a Dreadhorde Arcanist. Being able to buy back spells from the yard is just crazy, and then having them discounted too. You could literally put this card into such a wide variety of archetypes. Bilbo is just insane value. I find it hard to imagine this card doing anything but being a Standard staple going forward, because this is so many good things slapped on the 1 card. Bilbo is awesome. What a powerful card. The next card on my list is the Lord of Eagles, a 9-mana 8/8 legendary creature, bird noble with flash. And it costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creature control with flying. It's a flyer itself as well. Now, people refer to this card as Bird Galta, which I think is pretty accurate, honestly. But I feel this card is very well positioned because we already have decks that it slots into automatically, right? The Blue-White Momo deck list. It's an auto-include in that. Makes me think of the horrors of this card in combination with a practice offense. That is going to be a ton of damage out of nowhere. Very, very easily cast in that list. very early cast into the game as well with the help of Momo and all the other flyers that the deck list represents. But I could also see this in like a blue-white like prison deck that also has a lot of flyers already. The blue-white prison deck has a lot of creatures with flash. You can just slam this thing in there too, and all of a sudden you have an 8/8 threat that's out there. Like the flash on this card too feels pretty unnecessary, but very welcome anyways. And I think it just has so many good things on there. Feels well positioned. Maybe another like flyer deck can somehow pop up in the format. We have a lot of really good flyers, and Lord of Eagles seems to be a fantastic payoff for doing such a strategy. So big fan of this guy. I think we're going to see it played in Standard a good amount. The next card on my list is Riddles in the Dark. 3 mana instant. Look at the top 4 cards of your library and separate them into a face down pile and a face up pile. An opponent chooses one of the piles and you put that pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So I know there's a lot of like staple card draw effects in blue, like we have Consult the Star Charts and like Stock Up, and it's really hard to like replace those cards. However, I feel like Riddles in the Dark is capable of doing that, because there's a couple of like reasons why this card could be better than the other ones. Like if you play a deck list that cares about the graveyard, this card interacts with it because the pile that isn't chosen goes into the yard. So that could be beneficial for Lessons, or maybe if you're doing like Reanimator, right? Like with Kavera or whatever, like Dimir Excruciator could take advantage of that. But what's also really interesting is that it's instant speed. So instant speed card advantage allows you to basically hold up interaction, whether it be like removal, counter magic, or whatever. If you don't find a reason to play that out, before the turn goes back to you, you could fire off instant speed card draw, which is really awesome. But what I love about this is that it's basically, it presents a dilemma to your opponent, and that could really like favor you in the long run. This reminds me a lot of the old standard staple Atris Oracle of Half-Truths, where you can really do some like mind game stuff and force your opponent into a bad position. A scenario that could play out, for instance, is if I'm playing like an aggressive creature deck, I really want to win the game, and my opponent hits a board wipe with Riddles in the Dark, what they could do is, because you don't have to separate it in like even, it doesn't have to be 2 cards and 2 cards, you could also make a pile of 3 cards and 1 card. So if my opponent makes that 1 card be a board wipe or a card that I absolutely do not want my opponent to have, then they can put themselves in a position where they make that be the face-up card, and then I can have to give them the 3 face-down cards. So it would be crazy to get 3 cards off of a 3-mana instant. I think it's a really cool effect. I'm really excited for it, and like I said, I think there's absolutely decks out there that would want to play this over Stock Up or Star Charts because of how much like value it represents. And of course, I just love the mind games that this card will put into the Standard format. So excited to see that play out. Big fan of this one. Absolutely should be in, the top cards from the set, even though I haven't seen it in many other people's set reviews, which is kind of crazy because I think the value on it's awesome, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm pretty high on this card. Next on my list, my favorite card from the entire set, the Sackville Bagginses. 2 mana 2/2, legendary creature, halfling citizen. When it enters, you may sacrifice another creature or artifact. If you do, draw a card, create a treasure token. Whenever you sacrifice a token, target opponent loses 1 life. This card reminds me a lot of standard staple Deadly Dispute. I think Deadly Dispute is still being played in like sacrifice decks everywhere. What makes this card so awesome is that it's card advantage, it's a win con, and it ramps you up. And on top of that, it also gives you what you desire in those decks, which is a sacrifice effect. Now, I know sacrifice doesn't really have a presence within Standard right now, but I want to inhale Hopium and say there's potential here because this card synergizes with arguably one of the best sacrifice cards that we have in Standard, which is Obsessive Pursuit. And Obsessive Pursuit wants to see things sacrificed. Obsessive Pursuit has like artifact synergies. So you're going to be sacrificing a lot of tokens within an Obsessive Pursuit deck, which makes the Sackville Bagginses deal a good amount of damage. But what makes it so sweet as well is that you create a treasure token. So it's not a tapped treasure. You can immediately use that treasure. Like this card alone already represents like 2 triggers with Obsessive Pursuit. You just have to sacrifice 1 more thing and all of a sudden you get that like life gain effect on there. This is a perfect card to me. Like, I really hope this card is going to help like make sacrifice have a presence within Standard. I find it hard to imagine it not being the case because, man, this is so much value. Definitely is my favorite card. And yeah, it just does so many good things. I mean, like a 2/2 body that ramps you, that draws you a card, that is a win con. I mean, it's awesome. I love it. Perfect card to me and absolutely should be in this top 10 list. The next card is a card that scares me, Gandalf Goblin's Bane. 3 mana 2/3 legendary creature, Avatar Wizard. There's an adventure on the card, which is Flame Shape, a sorcery spell where you look at the top 2 cards of your library and exile them face down. For as long as they remain exiled, you may play them if you control a wizard. Then Gandalf itself has whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Gandalf gets +1/+1 until the end of turn and it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So the Izzet Prowess decks just lost a massive win con with Stormchaser's Talent being banned. I believe that Gandalf could be the new win con that they're looking for. There's a lot of wizard synergy already within the prowess like deck list. Like you have Slickshot Show Off, which is a wizard, but you also have Drake Hatcher that's a wizard. So I feel like there's a lot of ways to take advantage of Flame Shape, which could then basically be like 2 mana draw 2, basically, attached to like a win con with like the pinging and of course Gandalf like growing as well. So this could really be the card that's going to keep Izzet prowess or like Izzet with the cantrip or Izzet Spellslinger alive within Standard. I think Gandalf is very scary. I can even see Gandalf be played in like a mono red aggro, of course, as well. But it seems to be really valuable with like the other wizards that you get out of like blue. And of course, all the cantrip effects. Yeah, Gandalf could be a problem, I feel. So we'll see how it plays out. But Izzet not dead yet. Not as long as Gandalf is alive, in my opinion. The next card on my list is Smaug the Magnificent. 4 mana, 4/3 legendary creature dragon with flying and haste. Whenever Smaug attacks, he deals damage equal to the number of treasures you control to any target. Beginning of your upkeep, create a treasure token. I think Smaug fits into so many decks. Before we get into that though, like I'm pretty sure the pronunciation for this card is Smaug, but correct me if I'm wrong. I was browsing like Reddit threads and YouTube videos and all of that stuff to make sure that I had it right. So it's not Smaug, it's Smaug. That's what I'm getting to, but if everybody's fighting me on that, I'll pronounce it however you guys want. But to get back into the card, this fits into so many decks. I mean, the obvious thing, of course, is Boros Dragons. And I think Boros Dragons has a lot of potential. Like, we've seen Boros Dragons like get like top 8 results in regional championships like not too long ago because of the support and like the curve that Momo and Sarkhan provide. Especially Sarkhan is really awesome with Smaug because Sarkhan already gives you that treasure token. So Smaug is like an auto-include in Boros Dragons or like Mardu Dragons. We also have more payoff for that archetype with the Desolation of Smaug, which is a new board wipe that also ramps you into a 4-mana dragon, which could be Smaug or like anything else. But we cannot like underestimate this card when it comes to even like a mid-range value piece. Like I have played Jund Dragons in the past, where you take advantage of those like Tarkir payoff cards. And a creature that's going to be laying on the battlefield, dealing more damage over time the more treasures you're holding, but also provides you with ramp through making more treasures. And mind you, it's an upkeep trigger that makes you an untapped treasure, so that is going to ramp you up like crazy. We really shouldn't underestimate it as like a mid-range value piece too, especially now that the standard meta is like slowing down a little bit. So could be playable, and obviously the Boros Dragon deck list, which is a little bit more aggressive leaning, maybe as a mid-range like staple card within like Rakdos Dragons or Jund Dragons. A mono red aggro could very easily pick this up as well. It's an incredibly like powerful card. And Smaug is definitely going to be a very, very awesome card to play with and a very scary card to play against. Card number 9, we have the Bejeweled Warg, a 2-mana 3/2 wolf with trample. Whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, you get to choose one. You put a 1/1 counter on target wolf you control, so that could be the warg itself, or you create a treasure token. This is incredible value for a 2-mana card. And surprisingly enough, the 2-mana slot in a lot of green decks just freed up with Bajramolka being banned. So if you're playing like a beatdown deck list, like maybe you're playing like Celestia Offense or Mono Green Stompy, the Jeweled Warg could fit into that 2-drop slot that's been opened up. The Trample is obviously fantastic in combination with Prax Offense. I think any like green Stompy deck is always looking for a creature with Trample. And of course, this card grows over time with the 1/1 counters, ramps you up. But one of the things that's also really awesome is the treasure token it creates is untapped. So you could be in a position where your Bejeweled Warg like hits, right? You create a treasure, and then that treasure token allows you to hold a protection, like a Snakeskin Villa instance, which is going to be really relevant if control becomes more popular. So this really seems like a Stompy all-star. Of course, it fits really nicely into the Golgari Wolf archetype as well, which I'm pretty excited for. I think Golgari Wolves could be a very real deck list. But this card is just going to be a staple like 2-drop going forward in green beatdown decks. What incredible value on a 2-drop. And the last card on my list of the top 10 best cards from The Hobbit for Standard is Bjorn the Fierce, a 5-mana 6/6 legendary creature bear shapeshifter warrior with trample. Other bears you control get +2/+2, and at the beginning of combat on your turn, put a trample counter on up to 1 target creature you control. Becomes a bear in addition to its other types. Then if you control 3 or more bears, you get to draw 2 cards. Bjorn the Fierce has insane snowball potential, probably the most snowball potential out of like all the cards within the Hobbit set. It's going to be really sweet in combination with shapeshifters already. I think the synergy between Bjorn and something like Mutable Explorer is really awesome. Mutable Explorer making that mutable tokenable entering the battlefield, so immediately ramps you from 3 to 5 into Bjorn, is of course a shapeshifter, but also like a staple card like Furdok Core is a bear technically. So I think there's a lot of ways for you to get in a position where the second you slam Bjorn on turn 5 or like hopefully turn 4, you already have all those bears in your possession too, and you can immediately draw those 2 cards. On a 6/6 trample body, I love the fact that it's literally checks for it at the beginning of combat on your turn, so you can immediately like take those cards with you to main phase 2. It's very easy to ram into. Like I could see it in like a Golgari mid-range deck kinda, where it's going to be another fantastic source of card advantage with alongside like Unholy Annex and Professor Delian. I mean, the snowball potential is crazy. Maybe there's even like a mono green list that could use this. Maybe you want to be in like Gruul or something like that. But like out of all the cards in the set, the snowball value on this guy is insane. And drawing 2 cards is crazy. And pumping up the battlefield and also having trample attached to it. Like it just does so many good things. And Bjorn is going to be one of my favorite cards to start brewing around. What a fantastic card. So now that you know my top 10 cards from the Hobbit for Standard Constructed, first of all, let me know in the comments if you agree, if you disagree, if you have other cards that are in your personal like top list. But with that being behind us, let's dive into some sleeper cards. Now, what I mean by this is cards that I feel like people are not giving the respect they deserve. These cards deserve a little bit more attention because they have the potential to do something great. So let's dive into the 8 sleeper cards from the Hobbit for Standard Constructed. So the first sleeper card on my list is the Queen of Dale, a 2-mana 2/1 legendary creature, human noble. Whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, you recruit. So you draw a card and you discard a card, and if you discarded a non-land card, you create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. So I think a lot of people are skipping over this because it kind of like dies to every piece of interaction in the format, which is true. But when it gets targeted by something, you do end up drawing a card and discarding a card and hopefully making a 1/1 as well. So it leaves something behind and it fixes your hand a little bit. Maybe if you have Graveyard Synergy, that's even better. I like the fact that this card is like a removal magnet, right? Like the card kind of has to be removed if your opponent plays a lot of non-creature spells, or they're really going to suffer under the value that this card provides. So perhaps this card has a function as a really good sideboard card. Maybe it's like a card that you can play in the main as well, depending on how the standard meta develops. I just like the fact that you're almost always getting value out of this card. So I think, you know, the fact that it always does something and hopefully does a lot more if your opponent cannot answer it immediately makes it just like really valuable to me. And yes, it's very easy to get rid of, but I still think that the value that it can provide could make it a very scary card in Standard. But yeah, we'll see how it shapes up. For now, I'd shove it in my sideboard. And if the standard meta becomes a lot more non-creature heavy, we'll see how it goes. Next sleeper card on my list is Elrond Moonreader, a 3-mana 3/3 legendary creature elf noble. Whenever you activate an ability of a creature, you get to draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. For 7 mana, you can exile up to 2 other target non-land permanents you control and return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. I don't care at all about this like activated ability. What I care about the most is the fact that Elrond can be an incredible piece of card advantage. This card has fantastic synergy in combination with mana dorks. You can even put yourself in a position where if you're not really like using any of the mana dorks, you could still just like tap it on your opponent's turn and then draw a card out of it. Like in the right deck list, Elrond can get you a card on your turn and a card on your opponent's turn. That would be kind of insane. The problem with Elrond and why he's on my sleeper list is the fact that we have to find the right deck for him. I'm like thinking about like a Simic deck list with a lot of mana dorks. We can just like flood the battlefield with that, and it kind of is like just a fantastic piece of card advantage in there. So if we can find the right list for this card, it could be incredible. We just have to make sure we get there. But if you guys have any other like really cool cards that synergize with Elrond, let me know in the comments, because I'd be really curious to see how you guys are thinking about breaking this card. But I feel like it's one of those cards that has the potential to be broken, especially if you can fire it off on like turn 2, following up with a turn 1 land or else, you know, like this card could do some crazy stuff. Anything that draws a lot of cards can be really great. The next card on my list is an artifact vehicle. This is the Great Gilded Boat, a 3-mana 4/4. Whenever you attack, you get to recruit. So that's once again, drawing a card and discard a card. If you discard a non-land card, you create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token with a crew cost of 2. Now this card is on my sleeper list because I think a lot of people are not reading this card properly. It says whenever you attack, recruit. So this Great Gilded Boat doesn't need to attack for you to be able to recruit. Like you could literally attack with any other creature and get that effect. So this card is going to be able to really sculpt your hand, you know, fill up the graveyard, flood the battlefield with 1/1 tokens. Once again, I don't know exactly what type of deck list wants this yet. I mean, I'm thinking about my good friend Oculus, but maybe you can do it in combination with like tokens or something. Like maybe there's a way for like Dimir midrange to want this or something. There's just so much potential in here because this thing just needs to lay on the battlefield and you get that recruit value, which I think there's got to be something we can do with this thing. I'll be playing with it a lot, seeing if I can experiment with it, but for now, it needs to get a little bit more attention because, you know, when I had to read this card a couple times and be like, oh shit, it's whenever you attack. That's really powerful. So yeah, Great Gilded Boat, absolute sleeper. The next card we have is Keely the Resourceful, a 2-mana 1/2 legendary creature Dwarf Scout. It has Storied. So Storied kind of like reminds me of the City's Blessing, but a lot easier to get towards. If you control 3 or more artifacts, legendaries, and or sagas, you have an enduring story for the rest of the game. Now there's a lot of legendary creatures in Standard because of all the Universes Beyonds. If you're playing equipments already, which this card synergizes with, you're going to have a lot of artifacts really fast. So it's very easy to get the Storied like activated within equipment decks. Now, as long as you have an enduring story, you may pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost of the first equip ability you activate each turn. Whenever another dwarf or equipment you control enters, you get to draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Like, the value on this is insane. It's on my sleeper list because equipments is in a weird spot, right? Like, equipments, nearly every single set gets more and more power added to it, but it's just not quite there yet. However, if you're playing equipments in Standard, Keely has to be an auto-include, in my opinion, because it does so many good things. Like, the card advantage that it provides, super welcome. But if you can, like, make more expensive equipments equip for 0, then it gets very, very valuable. So if equipments can finally be a thing, Keely has to be a staple within those decks. Such good text on it. I hope equipments finally gets there. Keely may have a really big part of that. I mean, just how can you not like mess with a card like this? It just does everything you need it to do in the deck list that it will fit into. Like, free equips, shitload of card draw. Keely the Resourceful is a really, really sweet creature, and despite equipments not being a meta deck, we shouldn't sleep on him. The next card on my list is the Head of the Hunt, a 4-mana 4/3 creature wolf with flash. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead, and when you do, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. So, after the bans, like, the standard meta is slowing down a little bit, at least I hope so. And I think mid-range deck, especially black-based mid-range decks, could make a little bit of a comeback, right? Like with cards like Ancient of Data, Duress, like Hand Disruption, like these like valuable planeswalkers like, you know, Delian and Kaito being more relevant again, especially against control decks. I think black mid-range has the potential to return, and I think Head of the Hunt can be such a valuable card in there because it's basically rewards you for interaction, right? Like if you destroy a creature from your opponent, you get to make a 2/2 wolf. Ideally, you also like catch your opponent off guard with this thing, right? All of a sudden, you have a 4/3 blocker, perhaps you get a favorable block out of that, and then you also get to make a 2/2 wolf. So I think the potential of this card to flood the battlefield is really awesome. I like the fact that it's not restricted to like once a turn. Like you could really get a lot of wolves out of this. So I could see this be played in, you know, Dimir mid-range, Golgari mid-range, maybe even within a Golgari wolf deck, of course, as well. But yeah, I'm feeling good about the potential of black mid-range decks, and I think Head of the Hunt is just a fantastic value piece within those. So I want to take a gamble and put it on my sleeper list. And if you're somebody that likes to play black mid-range decks, I would absolutely consider a copy or like 2 of Head of the Hunt within your list and see if you can flood the battlefield with some wolves and close some games out. Because, and even like the exile effect could be relevant too, right? Like, I don't think we have a lot of like death triggers in Standard necessarily, but if it becomes more relevant, this guy is a great way to shut that down. So Head of the Hunt, absolute sleeper to me. The next sleeper card on my list is Golem, Riddlemaster. Another black card, 2-mana 3/1, legendary creature, halfling horror. As Golem enters, choose odd or even. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value of the chosen quality, choose one that hasn't been chosen. Put a 1/1 counter on Golem, each opponent loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life, or you get to draw a card. I think this card just represents so much value that I would be crazy not to put it on my sleeper list. We have to kind of like figure out, where does this card fit into? I think mono black aggro has gotten a lot of support from the Hobbit, so I'm excited to build that. But even like in a Dimir mid-range or like a Golgari mid-range or anything of the sort, I think it could just get so much value. I think the more you can predict your opponent's like hand, the better it will be. And I think that should be pretty doable in Standard. Like if this card at its very worst like forces interaction out on it, and when it happens, you replace it by drawing a card, that's already really awesome. If your opponent doesn't have interaction and they play into Golem, you've gotten yourself a 2-mana 4/2 creature that's gained you 2 life, made your opponent lose 2 life, and has also drawn you a card at the same time. That is just ridiculous value. So we just have to figure out where Golem fits. But I think, like, I find it hard to imagine this card like not being good enough to be Standard playable. Like it has to fit somewhere, in my opinion. And yay for good black creatures. Like, it's been a long time. So the next card that I have on my list that I consider to be a sleeper is the Arkenstone, a 5-mana legendary artifact where you have a white sorcery adventure attached to it, which is Seek the Heart. You search your library for a legendary creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. If the artifact's on the battlefield, creature you control get +1/+1, and at the beginning of your end step, draw a card. So with Standard slowing down a little bit more, I like this card more and more. I think we have a lot of legendary creature cards in Standard, of course, with all the Universes Beyonds coming out. I think there are legendary creature decks that are also kind of being slept on. Like, think about Allies, or I even played like a 5-color legendary human deck back in the day that put up some like results in Standard challenges. This is just like really valuable because it's a tutor, so it could give you the card that you need, but also when it's on the battlefield, it's like an anthem effect and it's a card draw source. So it feels to me like it could be a really sweet like top-end card. Especially if you have a little bit more like toolboxy synergy in here. Maybe you're also running like Celestial Reunion, so you could have these like spicy one-offs that could be perfect in specific situations. But it just feels like it packs so much value, and despite being a little bit expensive, don't feel like we should, you know, skip over this card. Like, yeah, the more legendary creatures happen, the crazier stuff becomes. Like, maybe you even want it in like a Kona deck or something, or like maybe even like Yuna. Like, I don't know, some of these like really key legendary creatures that make certain strategies happen. I think the Arkenstone has good potential, so it's on my sleeper list. The last card on my sleeper list is My Precious, a 3-mana legendary artifact equipment. It has an adventure attached to it, an instant speed spell, Allure of Power for 2 mana. As an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. The equipment itself gives the equipped creature hexproof and cannot be blocked, equip cost of 2 and pay 2 life. There's just so much value packed in this. I mean, I'm kind of envisioning it in a more like aggressive, you know, blacklist. Maybe we could even be thinking about this card in like Mardu discard. I can absolutely see it in like a sacrifice-based deck, like Ortsoff Sacrifice maybe. But I think one of the things that makes me not want to sleep on this card is the fact that hexproof is very powerful. We can see that from cards like Leatherhead. Now, maybe if you make like an Ortsoff Sacrifice deck that's also capable of going wide, you can also put in Prax Defense, and then all of a sudden you have a creature that has hexproof and cannot be blocked that also has the Prax Defense stuff attached to it. I dream of a world where I put My Precious on the Sephiroth. Sephiroth with hexproof would just make me feel great things. And of course, like, they cannot be blocked allows me to get value from Sephiroth's attack trigger as well. Now, of course, Allure of Power also synergizes really nice into that, right? Like, and I also like the fact that My Precious isn't really ever like a dead card, right? Like, if your hand's looking bad, if you have a creature that's not doing much on the battlefield, you just fire off that Allure of Power and you get yourself some cards. Like, Village Rites effects can be pretty solid. So the flexibility on this card is awesome. Making something hexproof and cannot be blocked turns anything into a crazy threat that is very difficult to answer. We just have to find the right list for My Precious, but I'm very hyped for it. It's one of the cards I'm looking forward to using the most as well from The Hobbit. So that's it for my set review. Like I said, please let me know what you think. What are your favorite cards from The Hobbit? What kind of decks are you looking forward to building? I think personally I'm the most excited for making Rakdos Goblins and Golgari Wolves. I'm also very much looking forward to Boros Dwarves and maybe Golgari Bears. So Black has definitely gotten a lot more support from The Hobbit, which is awesome. I think the color's looking great. I think the set's looking great. I think it's a hit. I think it's a 10 out of 10 set for me personally. I'm so excited to start brewing with you guys, and you can look forward to the first gameplay videos starting tomorrow. So thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next video.